Welcome into the Commanders Report by Chat Sports, presented by Prize Picks. I'm your host, Jack Sperry, and today it's time to meet rookie linebacker Sonny Styles, who the Commanders, of course, took with the number 7 overall pick in the 2026 NFL Draft. The Commanders probably could have tried to trade down if they wanted to. They decided not to. So what do they see in this young man that they think is so valuable to this team? We're going to be breaking down his pros, his cons, the risks, the rewards. We're going to be breaking down the entire thing here so you guys know everything you need to know about the Commanders rookie linebacker. But before we get into his player profile and scouting report here, if you guys want to make sure it's always sunny in your household on Commanders game days, you guys can go to chatsports.com/sunny and pick up your It's Always Sunny in Washington, D.C. t-shirt here. I really like this design from our merch guy here at Chat Sports, Arnold, who hooked us up here with a double point with Sunny on there with the new Commanders uniforms and helmets. This t-shirt's only $24.99 on our website. So if you guys want to help support the show and you want a sweet t-shirt that's going to get a bunch of compliments over the summer, if you wear it to Commanders training camp, I'm sure you'll get a lot of compliments there as well. So again, that's chatsports.com/sunny. That's a clickable link down there in the comments and description of today's show. You click the link, it's going to take you right to our website where you guys can make a purchase. So once again, I appreciate your guys' support. And now let's get into the scouting report on Mr. Sonny Styles and the pros that he brings to the table here, starting with his truly special athletic profile. And this has everything to do from his size to his arm length to his speed to his change of direction ability. People at that size, at 245 pounds, simply shouldn't be able to move the way this human being does. And that's why he had a truly historic showing at the NFL Combine this year in Indianapolis. He ended up getting almost a perfect 9.99 relative athletic score. That is a score out of a perfect 10, by the way. And the only reason why he didn't get the perfect 10 is because he didn't get an elite grade in the 3-cone relative to his peers. But, running in the mid 4.4s at that size, it really is incredible what he was able to put on display there in Indianapolis. And he showed it off on his film at Ohio State as well. This guy is a bona fide freak of nature. And because of that athletic profile, he has the upside to legitimately be the best linebacker in football someday. He has the upside to be the next generation's Fred Warner, right? The next generation's Luke Kuechly, like the next great linebacker in the National Football League. The next generation's Bobby Wagner. Like, he seriously has that level of upside if the rest of his game, from a mental standpoint, kind of catches up with the physical aspects of it. But there's no denying that this guy, has the physical upside to be a gold jacket type of player. If the rest of his game can kind of develop around that. But alongside the athletic profile that he obviously brings to the table and he's well known for, that's why he's a top 10 pick, he's a reliable tackler as well. He only had a 2.2 missed tackle rate, only had 2 missed tackles throughout his entirety of his final season there with the Ohio State Buckeyes. So if he's within the vicinity of somebody where he could tackle them, they're going to the ground. Okay, so having that kind of reliable tackler in your linebacker room, very important. This was a Commanders defense that missed way too many tackles last year. That won't be an issue for Mr. Sonny Styles. But he's also a really awesome coverage player as well. Now, his instincts in zone coverage are still developing because he is still new to playing zone coverage from the inside linebacker alignment. But he's going to be an eraser of tight ends if they want to put him man-to-man on a tight end. He's also pretty darn good in man coverage as well. If you want to put him on a receiver or a running back, like, he can just erase whoever he's covering in man coverage, because that's that combination of size, length, speed, change of direction ability, explosiveness, all that different stuff. It's really, really hard to beat that if you're a tight end or a running back going up against Sonny Styles. But then it's also a really good blitzer, which, by the way, is going to be very important as he gets implemented into Durante Jones's scheme here with the Washington Commanders. He likes to blitz his linebackers a lot. And, these Brian Flores, Durante Jones-esque type of defensive play callers in this system where there's a lot of moving parts and pre- and post-snap movement, they ask a lot of their linebackers. So that's why the Commanders really prioritized this position heading into the NFL draft this year, and why they felt like Sonny Styles was worth a top 10 draft pick. Now, coming up here on the Commanders Report, I'm going to tell you what really makes Sonny Styles special as a prospect and why he could be a Defensive Rookie of the Year candidate at the linebacker position this year. But before we get into what truly makes Styles special, let's have a word from our sponsor here at Prize Prize Picks, which is America's #1 sports picks app. With playoff basketball finally here, there's no better time to cash in during the playoffs. The Prize Picks app is super easy to use. You just pick more than or less than on a few player stat projections and then lock in your lineup. If you're a hoops guy, of course you can go with points, rebounds, assists, blocks, or three-pointers. And baseball season is now here as well, guys, so you can choose hits, home runs, or strikeouts if you're more of a seam head. One thing that I love about the Prize Picks app is their new social feeds feature where you can share Prize Picks with your friends and copy lineups with a single click. You can actually follow me on the app at Sperry to see all of my lineups. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code HMA when you play your first $5 lineup to receive $50 in lineups. That's code HMA when you play your first $5 lineup to get an extra $50 in lineups with Prize Picks. You guys can actually take a look at this projection looking ahead to next year's football season where you can choose the more or less on future touchdowns for receivers like Puka Nacua and passing yards for quarterbacks like Dak Prescott and Caleb Williams. In this particular projection, you can win $120 by putting in a $20 entry fee. That is if you get all three correct in what they call a power play. So again, one more time, guys, download the Prize Picks app today and use code HMA when you play your first $5 lineup to get an additional $50 in lineups. And make sure you guys click the link in the comments and description to download the app. And a big thank you to Prize Picks for sponsoring today's edition of the Commander's Report. Now, what I think really makes Sonny Styles special in terms of what he could be at the next level is the intriguing versatility that he brings to the table and that his athletic profile kind of allows him to have. Because he's so big, fast, long, physical, all these things that he brings to the table, he can play a bunch of different roles within Durante Jones's scheme based on, what situation that they're playing, matchups, all that different stuff. And I think that Durante Jones is going to use him as a dynamic chess piece. It's going to be kind of a different flavor than some of the other dynamic chess pieces that you see, like Kyle Hamilton and Derwin James and Nick Wari and some of these other kind of hybrid-esque players that you see around the National Football League. I mean, Styles is 20 pounds heavier than all of those guys, so you got to use them in a little bit of a different fashion. But I do think that Styles' versatility is going to be ideal for Durante Jones's defense, which really requires people to play multiple roles. Given a certain situation, they like to do pre and post snap rotations to confuse opposing quarterbacks. And you can't run a system like that if you don't have players that are incapable of playing other roles than what they usually play. And to have a chess piece like Sonny Styles, who's a former safety, by the way, you could do a bunch of fun things with him. You could, rotate him from an inside linebacker pre-snap formation and go and put him out into a cover 2 formation there, a deep safety, right? You could put him in the big nickel. You could mug him up right next to the center. You could put him on the outside as like an edge rusher. Like there's a bunch of different things that you can do with Sonny Styles. And I think if you're going to get the most value out of him and really make him worth this draft pick, you have to use him that way. Bringing in a creative defensive coordinator here in Durante Jones, I think will accomplish that. But then also, I think another thing that makes Sonny Styles super special as a prospect and what he's going to be bringing to the Commanders building is that he's such a high character guy. All right. He's still really young, but at 20 years old, just 20 years old, he got the block 0 there at Ohio State, which is a high honor in the Ohio State Buckeye program. And, Styles is just known for his work ethic, for his leadership, all these different things that he's bringing to the table, his intelligence. And, he was the guy in that Ohio State defense. Guys like Caleb Downs, guys like Caden McDonald, other first-round draft picks were looking up to this guy, even though they were older than him, because of the kind of leader that he is. And because of that, he might end up being a team captain in year 1. And that's exactly what the Washington Commanders needed to add to their building this year because they're losing their defensive captain and their leader in Bobby Wagner, who was kind of over the hill. He lost his speed entirely last year, and, it was very evident that Bobby Wagner is just not an NFL player anymore based on the tape that he put out last year. But to replace him and his leadership with somebody of the high character of Sonny Styles is exactly what this team needed. You needed a replacement to be the team's green dot. I think Sonny Styles takes on that role immediately as well. So I think you're getting a big upgrade in terms of the physical physical attributes, the speed, all that different stuff, the versatility, but you're also replacing the kind of high character leadership that you really needed to with the departure of Bobby Wagner here in Washington. However, with those pros, there are cons as well. There are risks and cons to drafting a linebacker in particularly this early in the NFL draft and essentially saying no to additional draft capital. When you have the number 7 overall pick in the draft, if you take a player there, you are saying no to, trading down and getting some nice draft capital in return. So let's kind of just talk about some of the risks and the cons here. First of all, he is still new to the position. He was a former safety, just moved to linebacker last year. So he's still new to the position. And when you watch his film, you can see some of the diagnostic stuff, especially as a run defender and, also in zone coverage, it's still developing. Now, because he's so new to the position, it's very possible that he's just scratching the surface. And, the mental side of the game and the diagnostics and how to anticipate stuff in zone coverage, that's going to come in time. All right, but the run defense, I do think, is inconsistent from Sonny Styles. I think that sometimes he's very slow to trigger and kind of understand what the offense is trying to do. And, when you watch Ohio State defensive film, you don't really see Sonny Styles impacting the run all that often. Now, he's got insanely awesome highlights with his power, completely destroying blocks and, the athleticism to chase down running backs. The high-end flashes are certainly there, but the consistency down to down, blowing plays up consistently just wasn't there on the Ohio State film. And sometimes he can really be a headhunter where he kind of like shoots his head into, opposing, blockers and just takes himself out of the play entirely when there could have been an opportunity to make a play elsewhere. I think sometimes, he can be guilty of playing almost a little bit too aggressively at times, and, that can be a problem for him at times, again, on his Ohio State film. But also, there is a risk to taking a linebacker in the top 10 because it is viewed as such a low value position. And, if you're going to be spending a top 10 pick on a player, right, you are expecting that player to become a weekly impact player, right? And it's going to be every single game where this player is going to be somebody that the opposing team is honing in on as a problem for them. And the reality is there's just very few linebackers in today's NFL that do that on a regular basis. There's some that can force a fumble and that can change a game from time to time. But I would probably argue right now the only inside linebacker in the NFL today that is truly a week-to-week impact player that is consistently changing the outcome of games is Fred Warner. So essentially, if this pick is going to be worth the value the Commanders spent on it, you are banking that Sonny Styles is going to be a Fred Warner-esque type of player, a Luke Kuechly type of player, a Bobby Wagner type of player, and those players just are very rare, all right? And listen, Styles has the upside and the physical skill set to be that kind of player, but because he's so new to the position, there's still so much we don't know about him going into the league. There is a level of risk to taking a player like this in the top 10, and that's not saying that he won't work out here in Washington. He won't be a really good player. We just talked about all the things he does bring to the table, but I think it is worth mentioning the risk here of taking a linebacker in the top 10. And, part of that risk is that this particular position, not only is linebacker a lower value position, but it's also a very high percentage of busts in the first round. You look at guys like Devin White and Isaiah Simmons, and Tremaine Edmonds wasn't everything that he was billed to be going into the league. First-round linebackers just really don't work out as often as a lot of these other positions. And I think the reason for that is that linebacker is such a hard position to play well at the NFL level. You have so much on your plate. You have to be able to do so many things. And to Styles' credit, he's got the physical, ability and the tools to be able to do all those things at a really high level and be a truly impactful player. But round one busts at linebacker are extremely high. So the Commanders are, taking a little bit of a risk by taking a linebacker this early instead of maybe trading down, getting multiple players, maybe drafting a receiver in round one would have been a lot more safe than drafting a linebacker. But certainly the reward is up here, just as much as the risk is down here for the Washington Commanders as well. But in the end, I do like this pick. I want to make abundantly clear that I love the pick of Sonny Styles. I gave it an A grade on draft night. All right, I think that this is a high character guy that is not only a fantastic physical talent, that could be one of the truly dynamic defensive weapons in football over the next decade. But he's also a really high character guy, and he's replacing that defensive leadership element that was vacated with Bobby Wagner's exit. So don't get me wrong, guys. I really like the pick, and I understand why the Commanders made it. But with that said, Washington, I think, really needs to utilize Styles' versatility and turn him into a player that can do a bunch of different things. Don't just pigeonhole him into one specific role. Put him on the edge, mug him up next to the line, to the center on third downs, and threaten the blitz. Use him on these pre and post snap rotations to really confuse quarterbacks. Use him as a big nickel on early downs, as kind of a hybrid linebacker slot corner. He can do all those things. He's more than athletic enough to do all that. So I think, if Durante Jones is smart about the way that he deploys Sonny Styles, he's absolutely going to be worth this draft pick. And if Styles is just a linebacker, I don't think I'm going to like the pick as much, if I'm being completely honest with you, especially if he doesn't develop the run diagnostics, if he doesn't develop zone coverage instincts the way that we've seen some of these linebackers develop them in years past. There's just some question marks on this profile, especially when you take into account how many first-round linebackers do not work out in the National Football League. But the upside is certainly intriguing here, and I think that the goal for the Washington Commanders when it comes to Sonny Styles is to turn him into, the next kind of super unique, dynamic chess piece that is moving all around the defensive formation and is kind of wrecking games with his versatility, because I think that's really what makes him special. So if Styles is an instant hit and they use him in the exact way that I'm prescribing, and he's the next Nick Emmanwori, or if he's the next Kyle Hamilton, and he becomes that next kind of game changer in the middle of an NFL defense, he could be Defensive Rookie of the Year this year. That's absolutely within the realm of possibility. Linebackers rarely win the award, but if we're gonna have a linebacker in the next decade or so win one, it's probably going to be this guy, because of the incredible upside, the versatility, all that stuff that we've talked about on today's show. So I'm definitely excited to see what he's going to do in his rookie campaign. So let me know, more or less, down there in the comments section. Styles has more or less than a 10% chance to be Defensive Rookie of the Year this year. Type M if you think the chances are higher than that, or type L if you think the chances are lower than that. Let me know what you guys think down there in the comments section. And that will conclude our player profile and scouting report for Commanders rookie linebacker Sonny Styles. We're going to be doing player profiles like this on every single Commanders rookie that they drafted this year. So if you guys want more of this kind of content, make sure you guys click that subscribe button. If you haven't already, it's free to do so. Until next time, guys, go raise some hail.